even if it saves one person to know like what a mom goes through when they lose their child to suicide. Like if another kid is listening and goes, man, I can't do that to my mom, then I did everything right, you know? And that's always going to be why my yes is a yes.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free, safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Runnebaum, a suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. Today, my guest is Kim Prosser. She lives in Ontario, Canada, and it's a bit of a complicated thing. So here in Canada, there's a guy in Ontario. He's been charged with all types of first-degree murders and all types of other things for selling a type of chemical online for people to use on themselves to take their own lives. He has sold over 1,400 packages. He kind of like lurked around in suicide forums, chat groups and stuff. And Kim's son, Ashton, purchased some of this stuff from this guy, Kenneth Law, who is sitting in prison right now waiting a trial sometime next year. And so we discuss Ashton, we discuss Kenneth Law, and we talk about all types of stuff. And you might be surprised at Kim's opinion on Kenneth Law. If you could please support the podcast by either buying coffees, rating, reviewing, sharing this episode, that would be amazing. There's show notes, and in the show notes there's links to merchandise too if you'd like something like that. I just want to thank everyone that's been listening and is sharing and rating and reviewing. Thank you so much. But for now, without further ado, I give you Kim.
Ashton was like, I don't know, he was so like brilliant and happy, and I don't if you've seen pictures and articles and things, like he always had the biggest smile and like super, jokester and just like his own kind of comedic aura. But so happy and so brilliant. So like building Legos as a kid and starting to play video games, and like nobody wanted to play with him because he was 5, but he loved it, all the older kids were like way more like we could play, and he's just learning, but he's like, I want to play. Was an honor roll student. He was a class valedictorian in grade 8, even though he didn't want to be. He was like, Mom, like if I don't do my speech in grade 4, like I could still pass the class and I don't have to do it. And I'm like, nah, you have to do a speech. And he was the only one in his entire school that won 2 awards. Like he was such a great writer and like so smart, but like with little effort. So always like for school and stuff, I always found the teachers' comments were always like, man, like if Ashton put in a little bit effort, like he would go so far. And I'm like, but you're already giving him A's. Like, what is he shooting for, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, he was pretty quiet, though. Like, always only had that small, tight-knit group of friends. And I was like, dude, you got it figured out already. Do you know how many years I wasted with people who don't actually care or you think are your friends, but don't have your back at all? Like, you already got that figured out. You're saving yourself so much heartache and so much time, and energy on people.
So like quality, not quantity.
Yeah. So
yeah. So he was really brilliant, but he didn't like the accolades. He didn't like the attention.
No, I didn't want that.
Okay, nice. I'm curious, did you ever suspect Ashton of being neurodivergent?
No, we did start to look at those types of things. Like, so when we hit high school, like, again, he was still really quiet. He had that small group of friends. He really only had 2 friends, and they were a couple. And then most of his other friends were online. So he started saving and built his own first computer when he was 13 years old. He started saving at 11. he built his first computer and he started, PC gaming. He always still loved Nintendo. So every Nintendo system that would come out, he's like, I need it. I'm like, you're going to play it for 3 months and it's going to go away. And he's like, I don't care. I still need it. So I actually have his Switch still. And I play like Mario Party with friends of mine just to celebrate him, on the 30th of a month or something when it's those sadder times. He started getting into drawing. And so we were like, I was encouraging him, like, draw, like, that's amazing. Like, you're doing so good. And like, you should draw us a tattoo so all three of us could get it for Christmas. Like, you have 4 days. You don't even have to tell me yes or no for 4 days. And then you still have 6 weeks before I even need to see anything. But we could help you if you want to do it on your own. And so he was like, day 3, he was like, I'm going to pick birds. Like, I got an idea and I'll do it. I was like, okay. And he's like, then calls me like a week later, like, birds are so much harder to draw than you think. But he drew them and we all got them tattooed. So like, this was his, so beautiful. His was colored here. And then my older son is this one, so his is colored here, and then mine at the back is colored for mine. And so we all got them the Christmas before he passed away.
And so it's you were a single mom?
For the most part, yeah. So I have 2 kids. Like, Drake is 30 now. Ash would have been 21 April of this year. He was 19 years, like 1 month before his 20th birthday when he passed. I was married for a period of time. Like, they had a stepdad. We had amalgamated a family of 5 kids, but we weren't together. We were living together for about 4 years. And then we moved down to Windsor.
And he interacted okay?
Yeah. I mean, at first, when he first got here, he struggled a lot. And I was like, man, I really hope that I didn't just do something that like changed him and his trajectory forever. Cause like he did struggle at first when he moved here and he wasn't like that happy-go-lucky, but that all came back around, once he got a few friends and like it was a smaller school. So it was like everybody knew he was coming. It was middle of the year, like October. So it wasn't like at the beginning. And so, like, even parents knew, and I think it was just so overwhelming for him. They're like, oh, you're the new kid, And he's like, I remember we bought him this shirt that said, I need space. I was like, just wear that on your second day and you'll be okay, But he came back around and, like, I got to see him come back to who he was and, like, that happy-go-lucky.
And he got along with the step siblings.
Yeah, like that was, we were together for 7 years total, living together for 4 years. So, I mean, there's always struggles with like that sort of thing. But when we left there and moved down to Windsor and started here, like living here, Ash was 9. So he was still really young.
It wasn't like a sudden change or anything.
Yeah, my older son was in university here. It's how I found Windsor. I came down here once with him to set him up in university, get him all settled. And, 2 months later, I sold my house back home and bought one here and moved.
When did you ever notice him declining? Like, or was it a bit of a surprise when he passed?
In grade, when COVID first hit, when school went online, so like grade 11, he was in. He had honor rolls grade 9 and grade 10. Grade 11, he just narrowly missed honors. And in the spring of grade 11, I was at a friend's house. They're like my family for dinner. I would go once a week and hang out with them. And Ashton called me and said, I'm having thoughts of suicide and I don't know what to do. And I was like, I'm coming. I'm on my way. I jumped in the truck and I raced home and I called his brother and said, like, call him and talk to him on the phone. And I'm going to call, I don't know where I'm supposed to go with him. Like, where do you go when they haven't done anything yet, So I started to call hospitals and they said, okay, like we have 2 hospitals in Windsor. So they said go to the other location because they're better situated with a space for him to stay if need be. I went the 25-minute drive home. I picked him up. We went to the hospital. They were not actually going to let me in the hospital because he was 2 days away from being 18 or like, I don't hours away. So they considered him 18 and it was COVID. So are you kidding? Like, you can't not let me in. And so they actually found us a room, like a other part of the nurses station that they didn't really use. And they just let us sit in there eventually because we had to have masks on and then the face shields just to be there. And then they were like, you can sit in this room and that way you can take stuff off and you can hang out until we can get somebody from the other floor to come down to assess. And so at that time, it was basically just like, here's the assessment. They had a conversation with him. They brought me back in the room and they said like, it would probably be more damaging to him to go spend time on that floor than it would to go home unless I felt like there was imminent danger. And I said, okay, well, I mean, I can keep an eye on him. I don't feel like he's in imminent danger. I asked him, like, had he researched anything, like to do anything? And he's like, no. That progressed really quickly. So in the summer of 2022, so he had, in the meantime, graduated high school. They went on meds. They follow up with a family doctor, do a doctor appointment on the phone, no in-person visit, no real assessment, and just like, here's some medications and see ya. In a couple months, we'll touch base.
Was that because of COVID or?
Yeah.
Or COVID was over? Oh, okay.
No, it was like, that was it for just trying to navigate what we could do at that time. So then progresses through, he almost fails grade 12. He had 25 in one of his classes and his teacher said, don't bother writing the final essay. You can't pass. Like, you're not going to be able to pass. So he's looking at summer school to even graduate. He wrote the essay anyway. Again, brilliant mind, really good writer. The teacher sent him a message and was blown away, said man, if you could have done this through the whole class, but I'll give you a 53. This is so amazing. So he graduated and then he applied for college, Seneca College in Toronto. I mean, right from I think grade 8, he was like, I'm moving out to go to school. I'm going away. When I hit 18, I'm out. That was his, he was not he was like, I'm going to live in Toronto. I'm going to have a condo. I'm not having kids. I'm going to have a fancy car, all the big dreams, I'm going to make my own games. I'm going to be a famous YouTuber. I'm going to do all the things. And so he went to college. We drove him up to Toronto. My older son and I picked him up in London and got him set up. And
London, Ontario.
Yeah, London, Ontario, on the way to Toronto. Yes. Got him all set up and then found out that all of his classes were online.
Oh.
And within 6 weeks, he's like, I can't do this. I already know I can't. This is not for me. I said, I get it. I know it's not for you. Drop out. You're at $2,500. People go $25,000 in debt and then figure out it's not for them. Save yourself that money and just drop out now. You don't have to figure out everything. You have lots of life to figure out what you want to do to navigate a couple more years and go back to school. Just find some work because that was very easy to find at that time, and figure out today, and tomorrow we'll figure out tomorrow. And so he stayed in Toronto for the 8 months. He didn't work. It was the first time that he lied to me. Was college. Yeah. We had such a unique relationship, There definitely was frustration in that time, him being in Toronto and not working. And I was on the road traveling and paying all his bills for him. stuff like that was hard. Like, it was frustrating because I know his potential and you see all of this like brilliance and it's not going or it's not moving. And it's like, you just got to figure out today. And it was the first time that he like lied and then said, you know, he wrote me this big long letter, said like, I lied to you. I told you that I was going to get this job and like I didn't wake up for the interview. And he's like, it was all a lie.
It's weird. I remember being that age, but I kind of forget until I have a kid that age. And it's so true. It's like I can see both my kids because one's 18, or one's turning 18, one's turning 20. And it's like they have to have their whole life figured out right now. And it's like, whoa, like I don't even have my life figured out. And I'm pushing, you know, I'm late 40s. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell I want to do. Just, it's all right. You can reinvent yourself many times over and you don't have to have everything figured out. And
like a societal push of like, you need to know everything and go pick your school and then you got to go do this and buy a house and get married and have kids. And like, we're all so unique. How in the world would that ever be the cookie cutter situation that's going to work for every single person out there? It's not possible, you know? It's just not.
Right. Yeah.
We're all unique individuals. You can't think that one set of social check boxes is going to make everyone happy. And I think that's the problem, right? Even when you get to that part of your life where, oh, I checked all the boxes and now what? Like, I'm not happy. This was supposed to be the place I was getting to. Now I got all the goals and now what? Yeah.
There is so much pressure, and my kids lived through high school and COVID too, and it was devastating, especially for my older son, like socially and stuff. Yeah. Like, forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's crazy to think like what that will look like for all of them, like even school age kids, like people that were supposed to start school. How is that going to look? I do know it better than, you know, almost anyone could now.
Yeah, exactly. So he lied to you that he wasn't looking for work.
I mean, he was trying, but he just wasn't getting a routine. He couldn't even get himself into a routine of like, you know, getting up and brushing my teeth and get the usual things done in a day, like build that routine. You know, he would try so many different things. He bought this exercise game that came with a resistance band for his Switch, Nintendo Switch, and was just like, hey, like, I'm going to start trying to work out. Or like he just struggled in trying to find whatever was going to work for him, you know? So after 8 months in Toronto and his lease was up, he decided he wanted to move back to Thunder Bay, which meant moving into my parents' home, the home I grew up in as a kid. From age 12, they've lived in the same place. And so that really just gave him the space. And this isn't for blame or anything like that. I honestly don't blame anyone, not myself, not my parents, not this guy that's sitting behind bars. I don't blame anybody. It's just like the reality of being able to go there and continue doing what he was doing, which was just isolating. And so the summer before, summer 2022, I got a call from my mom, and she said he had attempted suicide and they had called the police and he's gone to the hospital in ambulance. I said, okay. I had just started a summer job, because I came back from travel over the winter. And I said, like, hey, I might have to get out of here. Like, I don't know what's going on yet. I don't know the extent of anything. I'm waiting for more information. They said, no problem. Just keep letting us know, you know? So I talked to him. It was a really minor attempt, but he wrote a letter. He was serious in his face of it, but the attempt of what he did was minor. So we talked, we had some conversation. 10 days later, he tried again. I threw my dogs in the truck. I got a call around 3:00 in the afternoon. I called my work, said I gotta go, and I loaded everything up and I drove to Thunder Bay. I got there around 9:00 in the morning. Just driving, dark, rain, moose, deer, tears, all the things. Longest drive. Got there at 9 a.m. Like, let's go to the hospital. Like, I'm going to fall on my face soon. I just want to see my son. Visits don't start until 2 p.m. What? I have to wait to sign up for a visit to go see my son in the hospital.
But COVID was over, right?
Sort of. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, not in hospitals, maybe. They were still really kind of.
Yeah, the hospitals were still. So it would have been, had I not met with the doctor that first day, I did have to wait until 2 o'clock to go and see him. But I met with his doctor right away. We all sat in a room together for an hour. We talked about everything. I said, like, at the very least, can we like all agree that the medication that he's taking isn't working and we could try to navigate something else, right? At this time, I was only starting to dive into the holistic wellness side of things. I was starting to take, my Reiki level 1, kind of exploring what that looks like. She said, after we met, she said the next day I could take him out of the hospital for 2 hours and following days of that for 4 hours each day. The alternative was that we had to sit in a public room. We couldn't even go to his room, and we had to have masks on and talk at a table in a public room. I was like, man. So she let me take him out. We always went and like found stuff to do. Went to my parents one night for dinner so that they could see him. We all sat down at the dinner table, and my mom's partner the next day, when I came down from in the morning, said, I don't know what you did last night, but that is the most amount that I've heard Ashton conversate in the entire combined time he's been here, which was the end of April. And this was like June, July. I started a conversation. That's it. If you start a conversation, Ashton was so open to having conversation and talking, and he was talkative. He always had good opinions on everything, and like we could talk for hours on anything. But you had to start and initiate that conversation. He was not starting the conversation, and nobody in the house was talking. So they let him out of the hospital after 6 days. And 8 days, after 8 days of being there, I left. I said, come with me, come down, visit, hang out with me. I was going to go do a trip to Virginia to see a friend. I said, like, you can come with me. It's open-ended. You can stay for as long as you want, as little as you want. No, I don't want to go. Come on, man.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was he getting help in the hospital, or was it more just a safe place for him to be?
So he did have some meetings, and this is what initiated the testing. So the second attempt, because it was more serious, they actually like started to do like some testing for what are our answers. Like he was looking for answers. Like, I might have this, I might have this. You go online and you start to, but even in our conversations, like all of that time, in those 8 days, like he admitted to me, he had a terabyte of information on suicide. So definitely like moved into an ideation, of what that was. And he was always very open. Like he started cutting himself. He told me he cut himself, and I asked him for pictures, and I told him, go to the pharmacy and get this, and it can help with scarring. And like, he was always really open with me about what was going on, but I didn't know what to do to help. I'm the province away, like the biggest province away. You may as well be clear across the country. It is so hard to navigate and you're just like, I'm a mom and I'm trying to will my son to live. Like I couldn't have been anything other than that.
Did he talk to therapists or counselors or?
So they did try to get him into counseling. There was like a wait list. There was a couple of times that he had a counselor that came to the house to have conversation with him. He did start to do some of that testing. Like I said, when he got everything back from the tests, like he was like, I'm more confused now than I was before I even started. There really wasn't any clear answers for him as to anything that would be definitive in helping him navigate.
I had a suicide attempt and spent some time in a psych ward, and it took me almost, I want to say almost 10 years from that point to when I actually felt like I got the answers. I mean, I was getting little answers and little clues, and it was like you get just enough to keep going and trying and looking at stuff. Yeah, I totally relate to him getting more confused.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty common. Like, you're not the first person who told me it took them a decade to navigate what was going to work for them in the way of counseling, in the way of medication, in the way of all of those things. And now I wonder, or I'm curious, and I don't know if you know much about it, like, what does that look like on the side of maid service since now they open that up to mental health struggles? Like, do people have to have a decade in before they can navigate that?
Well, actually, I don't. I think the government has actually taken that off the table and said, let's look at it some more. So I think they're coming back like in another 3 or 4 or 5 years.
So I've actually heard of 2 different stories of people that were asked if that was something that they wanted to navigate because they were struggling. They were offered it.
Really?
And that blew my mind. Blew my mind.
Yeah.
2 different stories. That's this year. And I was like, what in the world are you talking about?
So for those of you that don't know, MAID is medical assistance in dying or in death. So it's basically euthanasia, basically, for people with mental illnesses or mental health issues. I thought it was off the table in that, and then even if it was on the table, it was like up to the provinces and then up to, like it has to be voted on in the hospital board has to look at your application and then they decide. So it's not consistent across the country either. It would be up to individual applications and stuff. So very controversial, very not consistent, and I'm not a big fan of that.
No,
because
I mean, if it's if it's like a terminal illness and it's about dignity, then I am all for, giving people the opportunity to die with dignity. I think that's important. I express it to my family, like to my son, that, if ever at a point you're questioning whether I want to be here, then it's probably a time for me not to be here anymore. Right. If my quality of life isn't there, then I don't want to stick around, Don't keep me here, please.
Yeah.
If it is part of that, like if it is still an option, say just in Ontario, I don't know. What holistic services do people have to have sought out, or any, if any? Is it just psychiatry, social work, medications, resistant to medications, things like that? Like, because I'll tell you, I was on medication for a very, very short amount of time. Last summer, I did not want to be here anymore. I definitely struggled a lot. When he first passed away, I wanted to annihilate this world. And then you quickly turn that knife on yourself. He called me to say goodbye.
Oh, no.
The day of. Like an hour and a half before.
Did you realize it at that point? Or did you realize afterwards that that's what it was?
So many things afterwards, right? So many times that call replays in my head forever. Of like, oh shit. But I didn't see it.
Was part of you not wanting to be here maybe like guilt or shame that you didn't stop it or didn't recognize what? Yeah. And then just why am I here still, whatever, like it just was so dark. And then I have a mentor and a best friend who I met 8 days before my son passed away, and I've talked to him almost every single day since. He introduced me to breath work. When I went on medication, I stopped doing breath work because it wasn't getting me anywhere. I just knew I didn't want to be here anymore, and I was afraid of what that was going to look like if I kept going. I actually was prescribed a same medication that Ashton was on at one point when he was in Toronto. What was that medication, do you mind me asking?
Trintellix for major depressive disorder, if you're familiar. It's probably a newer-ish one, because they just hand out samples free, and a month worth of it is over $100. So if you don't have like benefits or something like that, it's expensive.
They actually hand out samples?
Yeah. So most of mine was samples. I was on it for 9 weeks, and I just was navigating all these different things, and I'm going like designing my life around how to take medication. Like I need to eat here and not there and not this time, but eat at this time. And I was just so tired of all of it. I was like, I'm done. And not that I recommend this to anybody. I was on it for a very short time. It was 9 weeks. It wasn't, anything long term, but I went off. I quit. Day 7, after stopping the medication, it was like, wow, this mind-blowing moment of realization of what that medication was doing. Like, it was not just the lows that were numb, it was the highs too. If you want to talk about a zombie apocalypse, we might be living one, And I'm not nagging, like, medication can be really good for for a lot of things. And like, if people aren't in a place to navigate what is going to work for them, medication is a great temporary to be able to function in the dysfunction of trauma, grief, whatever it is that might be coming at you. I don't negate the good things that are possible with that type of medication. But I think the thing is, it's meant to be temporary. And it really was the holistic side of things that saved my life. Breathwork brings me to a transcendent state. And I literally go on journeys in it. And that's just breathing. There's nothing else going on. I'm not taking anything. I'm not under the influence of anything. It's just breath. But it was just that realization after 7 days of being off of it, like, wow. And I think that's hard too, like that guilt of like, man, I love my life, but it doesn't mean that I'm not sad every single day. The last few have been really tough. Just like, and you don't even know, you set something like this up and you're like, yeah, I can do it. And then, some wave comes in and you don't know how long it's going to be there. You don't know any of those things. Like, you just got to go with it and allow whatever emotion is going to come up to come up.
And yeah, for me, I mean, everybody's different, right? Like some people have chronic depression, some people it's situational. And like you said, some people need medication, some people need holistic, some people need a cross or a mix of both.
Yeah.
And it really is a journey of trying to figure it out. Like it took me 10 years. It took you a couple of years to find what worked for you. But yeah, I find a nice mix of stuff. And
no, that's a thing, right? Like everybody's journey is going to be unique for sure. And like, it's part of what I'm doing now with my business, is trying to find assist and support people in that journey. What works for you? What doesn't work? What is working and what isn't working? So when I'm coaching with a client, like it's that every week of like, here's some things, try these things. How did that go? What worked for you? What helped? What didn't? What are you still struggling in? Then try something else,
Yeah, you can't have enough strategies and enough tools.
And I think that's it. Like a decade is common for people to navigate. Like I've been crying for the last 3 days going, I don't even know how I'm going to do this today, getting myself together to be able to come on camera and not ugly cry in front of everybody.
It's okay if you do.
Yeah. That's the part that's hard, right? Is like, okay, you know what? I'm the most raw and vulnerable me that I've ever been in my entire life. And I have had to accept that that's how it's going to be for me.
Yeah. And I appreciate you. I can only imagine how difficult this can be, especially because of the media thing around it. You kind of mentioned there's a guy behind bars right now, and you mentioned media and stuff earlier, because he ended up buying this chemical from the internet, and now this guy he bought it from is in prison, but he didn't just sell it to Ashton. He sold it all over the world, and there's people all over the world that have lost their life. How do you feel about that whole situation? Do you think it was inevitable? Like Ashton probably was just going to find some method anyway?
I do. I do for Ashton, and I don't know. Like, I don't know how many more attempts that looks like. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if he would still be here or not. There's no way for me to know that. But do I believe that he would have continued to try to navigate finding a way to leave here? I do. I think when you have
he had a terabyte of information,
and when you have friends who have told me, like, I spent every day in the last months of his life trying to convince him to stay, to stick around, to be here. I don't feel like he would be here. And I think it's part of the reason why I say yes to all the things that I say yes to, which you said, like the media. I've done probably 30 interviews and now this podcast, and I have another one tomorrow. I don't know why I set them up back to back, but that's okay.
Mine's better anyway. Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is supported by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for about 20 years. If you live in Western Canada, especially the prairies, or spent any time here, you've probably fueled up or bought groceries at a co-op. You might even have a co-op number, or 2, or 3. You know if you know. But co-op is not just a gas bar or grocery store. Although co-op is those things too, it's a different kind of business. Co-op members are owners and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at co-op.crs.
Fever, cough, congestion. When the symptoms keep coming, but you've got to keep going, you can rely on Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One. Just one dose of Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One relieves up to 9 cold and flu symptoms, helping you get on with your day. Need cold and flu relief? Get Mucinex Fast Max All-in-One and Done Relief. It's comeback season. Use as directed.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
But yeah, I'm just like, all of my yeses right from the get-go have been like, this is for a reason bigger than just me. There's a reason why Ashton chose this guy. There's a reason why this story came to be. There's a reason why people are asking me to do this. And for that reason, even if it saves one person to know like what a mom goes through when they lose their child to suicide. Like, if another kid is listening and goes, man, I can't do that to my mom, then I did everything right, and that's always going to be why my yes is a yes.
And not just that, but also to help other parents that are maybe struggling with loss. I know I've spoke to a few parents now, but it does seem like it's a whole other type of grief. And no, I'm not poo-pooing other types of griefs, but grieves. I don't know what the plural for grief is, but it does seem like it's like this whole other level of grief when it's a young person to suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you talked to a lot of other parents that have lost kids?
I actually just went to a grief journaling group, which was like watercolor painting, and then you can let it dry and write whatever you want and like create a grief journal, you know, like a memory of like different times, whether you want to write in it on significant dates or whatever that looks like, which was really cool to experience. And then I went to this last week, my first grief group for child loss, specifically not specific to suicide. So there's a wide range of what that looks like. It's a heavy room to sit in.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And people are at all different stages, right? When anyone ever asked me, what's your worst living nightmare? Lose a child was always my answer. So the only thing that could change me at my core would be losing a child. And now here I am. Never in a million years when I said that would I think that was the experience. But it did change me. But it didn't change me in the ways that I ever expected that it would.
How did you think it would change you?
I mean, life is definitely different for sure. It's always going to be that miss. There's always going to be that, you know, there's never going to be another memory that we get to create together. There's no more photos. There's no more trips, no more adventures. You know, it did change me, but it didn't destroy me. Like, I have so much passion and so much drive to help other people in his circumstance, in my circumstance, in any trauma, grief, whatever it is. Like, I just want to help other people navigate what that looks like. And that's not easy to do without a sense of guilt, but that guilt isn't yours. It's a guilt of society. And you have every right to be happy and sad at the same time.
I was just going to say, one of the things I've learned recently is you can feel two opposite emotions at the same time, and it's okay. It's like you can be happy, but you don't have to feel guilty for being happy. You can also be sad. You can still have pleasure. You can still feel happy, and you don't have to feel bad about being happy just because this other thing is also there and you're also feeling it. Are you saying this because you've been judged? Have you heard any judgment from people? Like,
I just feel like maybe people that I used to be able to sit and be present with, I can sit and be present, but not really be my authentic self anymore. That's definitely the case in some circumstances. It doesn't mean that I don't love and care for those people. It doesn't mean that I wish them any ill will or don't want to have them in my life anymore. It's just like, okay, I know who I could be authentically raw, vulnerable me with and who I can't. I think Western civilization doesn't give us the opportunity to really talk about grief. I think people more want to avoid talking about grief and stuff all that down. But that's going to come back around. Like, you can stuff it all down all you want, and it's not going to stay there because something else is going to happen. Some other struggle, some other challenge is going to come up, and you're going to be facing all of it together again.
If you hadn't lost Ashton, do you think you would be the person? Well, okay, what am I trying to say? If you hadn't lost Ashton, you were just bopping along, working at jobs and stuff, and maybe he wasn't the perfect kid still. He was having trouble, and you're just supporting him. Do you feel like you would be... Okay, this is such a weird question.
I know what you're going to ask.
Do you know where I'm going with it?
Yeah, I do.
Like, obviously, you've had some positives.
I'll say the hardest thing for me to accept or reconcile with, or whatever word you want to use, whatever word makes you more comfortable.
Come to terms with?
Yeah, is that it took him committing suicide for me to understand all of the things that would have helped him stay here. Is one of the hardest things that I'm coming to terms with currently. His magic started right away. Like, I'll tell you, and I could tell you crazy stories of synchronicities in my life, of like things that were put in my path. And like, there was definitely guides and things before him The person that is my mentor and my best friend is 8 days before he passed away. The person that I was with when I got that phone call and avoided it because I just talked to him an hour and a half ago, I knew for less than 72 hours. A decade ago, I had a cancer journey. I met the partner I was with that was the perfect partner for that journey 3 weeks before I was diagnosed. Like, all of these things came in. But when I tell you his magic, like, he died on March 30th, 2023. I was supposed to get his ashes on March 8th. And then I booked my flights and they told me, oh no, because of Easter weekend, you're not going to get them in time. So something that you come to realize is that death still works in business hours. I never knew.
Right.
But people still have a life, right? Also, this world, it all still goes on and it's still mundane and it still exists in all its mundaneness when you're in that going, what in the world are you complaining about paper towel for? My son died, right? Like, you can't, it all just still exists in its 3D low level energiness. And it's awful at first. And then now it's harder too because you get caught up in it. Like, I catch myself going, man, that's so 3D of me to have said that. But it comes back around, eventually you're like, man, I'm so day to day again. It's terrible. I don't want that life for me, but.
So because of Ashton's passing, you've actually opened up and have expanded big time.
Yeah.
Like you said, you would have been just the mom that had the job, and now you've actually, as a being or as an entity or whatever you want to call it, as a soul, you've actually expanded, and in a way, I suppose that's a gift that he gave you, or that's kind of what I mean by he may have saved you. It's like he sacrificed himself for you to grow and to have the perspective that you have today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it's so...
That's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard, but yeah.
So I got his ashes on my birthday, along with pictures that I had friends in Windsor send up to me in Thunder Bay, along with rings and bracelets that I ordered for my son and I to fill with his ashes so we could always have him with us. All of the things. None of them were supposed to come on my birthday, but every single one of those things came on my birthday. And that was my first, got you,
I have a question about Kenneth Law again.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think he should be in jail?
I think that in decisions that we make in life, accountability is an important part of it. I don't think that our systems systemically set us up to allow us accountability, to take accountability for our actions when we make decisions that maybe aren't the greatest. We're not set up that way. I think there's a lot of places that do things better, and I actually have training and volunteer work in those areas called restorative justice. So it's something that's I'm really passionate about, and actually took restorative justice, brought it to restorative practices, and amalgamated it with my holistic wellness. And so I do workshops and retreats and things, and my coaching is based on all of this amalgamation. And it's we all make choices that aren't the best choices. We do. And if we start to try to understand more about that person and the choices that they made and why they were made, that maybe we could get somewhere better than where we are. We're not accomplishing anything in the space that we've been in for however long, of being reactive instead of proactive. So my question is this: why are 1,400 people coming to Kenneth Law for a way out or more, right? That's only the people who purchased it, approximately 1,400. Why are there 1,400 people out there on an online forum for suicide? Why are all of these people looking for this space to get out of here? Why? why are we not looking at that side of things and only just being reactive to the process of what happened where this guy, and I don't know, like we have trial next year, 2 months, and I want to, with everything in me, want to be there every single day to maybe understand a glimpse of that more, you know? And I honestly hope that when all of that is said and done, because I don't think it could happen before, that I would love to sit down with him and have a conversation like you and I are right now.
Just to ask him why and like what, because I mean, some people might think he's just evil. He wants people to die, and maybe he's thinking he's providing a service and he's being compassionate. I don't know.
Right. And that's a thing. I think like if when the first initial charges came as aiding and abetting suicide, that would be like something reasonable and accountable for actions that he took, maybe. But now there's 14 more charges. And they're first-degree murder.
It's going to be interesting. I want to know more, too.
I think there's definitely a possibility that people are trying to make an example, and I understand why. I mean, I wouldn't want that to continue to be something so easily accessible, although in our country, it is, and it continues to be. It's one of the last interviews that I've done in the social media aspect. And it's also part of the one that I'm doing tomorrow with the docuseries of people telling me that it is still the exact same ease to get it here. Then, like they have attempted to purchase it online and been successful. I know that a lot of people have come to places like where laws would be made against selling it, and there's been nobody, everyone is just saying, we don't see a problem in small consumable amounts because it is a product that they use for food preserving, particularly meats. They say because you can safely consume it in small amounts, that's okay. I think, there's other places that have jumped on it. So I know Colorado and California have already changed their state laws. If somebody sells it without having, enough information from the person that they're using it as a business, like preservative for meat or hunting, one of them is in legislation, and they had their son purchased it from like a hunting, fishing store on like off the shelf, and took their lives. And because he's in that line of work, laws got changed immediately, so fast. And we're still going, we don't see an issue with it.
And it's fascinating because you can also just go buy bullets.
Right. So that's the thing for me, right? Like, if he had a terabyte of information, what other spaces was he going to try to navigate? He knows that my mom's partner is a hunter. I grew up in a hunting household. There literally was guns. I mean, they're locked in a cabinet. He's all about gun safety and stuff like that. But there's bows. There's all this. There's so many things literally in the room next door to him.
Like in the States, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about gun laws and stuff. But like, yeah, it's pretty easy to go.
Oh, in the States, you can go buy some at the sporting goods store, Like,
it's so funny that they're jumping on this stuff.
Yeah.
But yet they're selling bullets by caseloads.
Yeah.
And not questioning, are you going to use this on meat?
Right. Or, what's your purpose?
Yeah. And the other thing is, we were just talking about MAID, medical assistance in dying in Canada. And so they're charging this guy with first-degree murder, but then also offering people MAID for mental illnesses. So it's like, it's hypocritical. Or it's not, but we didn't have a board. We didn't decide it. They just went and did it on their own. And I mean, I'm not saying that he shouldn't be charged. I don't know. I don't know all the facts. I don't know the case. Right. I don't know him, but I just find it hypocritical that they can charge someone. I
sometimes wonder, because I have done like 30 interviews and said like, I don't I don't blame this guy, and I do hope to sit down with him one day and have a conversation. Like, I would want to understand a little bit more. I think the small amount of information that I do have is that possibly, and I can't even, like, I won't confirm this, but potentially he watched his mom on life support for a long time, like 3 years maybe. That's just something that I heard. I don't know that that's fact. I have no way to verify that. Maybe that contributes to something where he's going like, man, these people are in pain and they're suffering. Like, I'm just helping them, navigate what that looks like. And it'll be interesting because I do get the choice to change my opinion at any given time. And given that they have charged him with first-degree murder in 14 counts, I'm like, what does that evidence look like? I have no idea, but I do plan to be there for those trials. I do hope to be in Toronto for the full 2 months, which isn't going to be easy for me to navigate, but I do want to change my mind. I do get that choice, but I think every soul on this planet, and I think this more than ever before in my life, because you could probably find somebody who I said something to that guy should burn in hell for what he did, But now, like, we're all born of light and love. And now that my son is gone, I say all that is left is love. That's all there is love. And if we can so my training in the restorative justice comes from a Maui tribe in Norway. And when somebody does wrong in a community, harm to themselves or harm to others, they all sit them in a circle and try to understand why, and what can they do to, one, repair harm to self, to family, or to community if community is involved. And then they tell them all the wonderful things about them because they're a human and they made an error. And maybe it was a really bad error, but they still just made a decision, and we all make them. The severity of that is maybe based on the trauma that person has lived through, the challenges and the struggles. Maybe that's what got them there. But if we're all born of light, and when we leave it's light, none of us are evil at the end of the day.
That's a really beautiful way to look at that. And, well, you put it into words very nicely. I appreciate that.
Forgiveness isn't easy, and mostly forgiveness of ourselves is not the easiest. But if we can learn it, if we can practice it, it doesn't just come. You don't just get to go in the mirror and go, I'm so sorry, I forgive you. It takes work. And if we could maybe try to get on the other side of that and understand it, then we could be more proactive instead of reactive to everything that's happening out there. Forgiveness
is actually self-care. To walk around just with a gut full of rage or resentment or whatever, you're going to get stomach cancer.
That poison is in you, not in the other person. And they don't even have to know, They don't even have to know that you forgave them. You never have to contact that person and say, hey, I forgave you, or I forgive you. You have that option, but you don't have to. It is for you. It's for you.
It is a choice too. It's not.
Yeah. And it's that you're drinking the poison and expecting the other person to have harm. So forgiveness of self, I think that's like the place to start.
I went through 12-step group, and it took asking for forgiveness from people to actually learn to be able to forgive people. You know what I mean? It was like I had to humble myself so much to ask people for forgiveness for some things that I consider are horrible things while I was drinking and using and stuff. And then to realize how humbling it must be for them to accept my apology, to then realize, oh shit, I think I can forgive people because they were going through shit. And, it's not all about me. And so, yeah, that was a good practice for me to learn how to forgive, was to actually ask for forgiveness.
Yeah. So crazy. Anyway. I'll say this similar for me of like asking for help. I emasculated partners because I would not let anyone do anything for me. I felt like I needed to do everything for myself. It took me losing my son and being this most raw, vulnerable me who's an extrovert, wearing sunglasses and headphones to go in the grocery store to get groceries because my fridge is absolutely empty and I fucking have no food left and I have to go there. I have no choice. It took that to ask for help. Then somebody gave me or shared with me a perspective. How much do you love helping people, Kim? This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. What if every single person that you offered help to said no? How would that make you feel? And I was like, wow, you're denying somebody else the gratification of being able to help another person by not asking for help or accepting help. Asking is still a struggle. Accepting is a little more easier for me now.
And as always, I want to thank my guest, Kim, so much for being vulnerable, for talking about Ashton and talking about her feelings with Kenneth Law and everything that's happening. And thank you for doing other interviews and spreading your message of love to other podcasts and news outlets and things. So thank you so much, Kim. Please keep listening and checking out the new episodes every week. I've got some incredible guests lined up. I have a gentleman that is a former porn addict who's now helping other people with that addiction. I'm talking to a lady named Amber who was in the Las Vegas shooting in 2017, and she goes around speaking at events and things for a group she's involved with called Survivor's Path. And there's also a lady coming up who her father is responsible for a murder-suicide, and we talk about that and talk about family secrets and stuff, which reminds me of an episode coming up with a lady who we talk about family secrets because her family had a really deep, dark secret. So keep listening. And while you're at it, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.